All right, Larry and Levon, we're at about 6:04. Do you think we're okay to start now?
Sure, why not?
All right, excellent. Well, I just want to say thank you for logging on this evening to learn more about the concept plans for Apache Boulevard redevelopment. Today, we'll hear from Deputy Director of Human Services Housing Division, Levon Lamy, and subject matter expert Larry Schmalz. They will share a short background on the project and then spend a few minutes on each of the concepts before we open it up for Q&A. If you think of a question along the way, feel free to type it in the chat and reference the concept you're asking about. Si tienes preguntas en español, favor de ponerlos en el chat y puedo ayudar a traducir. With that, over to Levon. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Levon Lamy, one of the Deputy Human Services Directors. My specific assignment is to the Housing Division. And thank you for coming to a conversation over some conceptual plans for Apache Boulevard redevelopment. And again, no, it is not April 16th. So with tonight's meeting, just as kind of a brief overview and project background, the projects that we're going to be discussing are very much in initial conceptual phases. The conceptual designs that you will be shown are designs that are fairly consistent with the surrounding buildings. So this again are very conceptual. The goal of these projects or developments are to address the longer term city goals for increasing affordable and workforce housing options. As we move through these, you will note, and we will mention that there were multiple funding streams utilized to acquire some of these properties. So some were acquired with general fund, some were acquired with federal CDBG or home funds, and some were acquired with transit funds. So there is a little bit of nuance to each of these properties depending on the funding stream that was used to acquire it. The overall goal to these developments is to have mixed use, mixed income developments that would have affordable workforce and maybe some component of workforce housing in order to, or I don't mean workforce, market rate housing in order to maintain, a healthy housing blend. When it comes to the individual projects that we're going to be discussing, again, these are very early in the concept designs. So the financing that will be utilized ultimately in the capital stack for the construction of these, can definitely influence and define what the housing mix is for each of these projects. Once we have, kind of walked through the upcoming slides, there will be some time for some Q&A. So I will hand this over to Mr. Larry Schmalz to walk through the individual projects. This is an illustration showing, we have bordered the parcel boundaries, and we will be working from a west to east as we discuss the properties. Larry?
Thank you, Levon, and welcome everyone. We're glad you're able to take time out of your busy schedule to join us and let us show you some of the opportunities that are coming up for redevelopment along Apache Boulevard. The first one we're going to talk about is our Lemon and Dorsey concept. It's at the corner of Lemon and Dorsey. And basically we have a 2-acre site there, and you'll see 2 buildings there, or 2 structures. One is an L-shaped 5-story building that will house about 68 affordable housing units. And the other structure is a parking lot, or a parking garage. And it'll hold about 127 spaces. Currently, there is a parking lot there that's being utilized for light rail overflow, and also in conjunction with New School for the Arts, some of their parking. And those 2 parking for light rail and New School will go into the new development. So that's kind of the overview for that one. If we can go to the next slide. This is the Apache Dorsey concept. And this is basically the existing parking right there adjacent to Apache Boulevard. And you'll see, again, two structures, one of which will be an L-shaped 5-story building housing about 80 units of affordable live-work housing for artists. And the second is a 200-space 4-story parking garage for the residents and replacing the parking for the light rail patrons. And both of these are the developer that was selected was ArtSpace, and you'll be hearing more about those as they go through the planning process. Next slide, please. Here we have the Apache HUD concept, which is at 2320 East Apache. Currently, it's a vacant lot that extends from Apache Boulevard to MacArthur Drive, and it's about 2.6 acres. And what we've shown here adjacent to Apache is where we have most of the height and density. We have a 5-story apartment building with a parking garage, and that's adjacent to Apache. And then closer to MacArthur, you're going to see a townhome project, which is basically 3-story townhome units with a parking garage underneath or incorporated into the townhome itself. And you'll also notice that there's a break between the two projects. And that's for a couple of reasons. One is it makes a nice break separating the different type of residential units. And also there's a sewer line there that cannot be moved financially, and also for a gravity flow. And so that makes an ideal place to break up the projects and to provide with an open space with some amenities that you would typically see in an open space type setting, maybe a little playground. You could do picnic tables, barbecue grills, those type of things. And between the two concepts, we think you could get probably about 250 residential units there. And if we can go to the next slide. This is the Apache Canal and Watson's Flowers concept. The city owns a rectangular piece of property adjacent to the canal, and we're working in conjunction with Watson's Flowers to redevelop both sites together, which is a benefit because you can have a better development because the sites are small individually. And it's about 1.64 acres total between the two. The concept is basically have a 5-story structure along Apache Boulevard. And then you'll see the parking, there's going to be about 106 units, affordable units there within the development. And you have some parking underneath and also on surface. And Gorman was a developer there. On the prior slide, I forgot to mention, we do not have a developer that has been selected yet. We're going through the RFP process now, and that developer will be selected shortly. That's still out. We're still waiting for those to come in. Then we'll do a panel and select a developer and present that to council. We'll review the submittals and then send it to council for selection of a developer. And I think that's our 4 developments.
Okay, excellent. So we will go ahead and open up the floor for questions. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand or go ahead and unmute yourself and just go ahead and ask.
And actually, Brenda, if we could just really quick before we get into the Q&A, I just wanted to put again that these are very conceptual project designs at the current time. We definitely wanted to get this out and have the conversation ahead of time so that we could kind of get the neighborhood feedback and the community feedback on what they think of these initial concept designs. But with the feedback that you have on these, please make sure that you're putting that feedback on the survey for the tempe.gov/forum so that it goes on that, the full record of the community engagement, and we're able to make sure that those are pushed forward with the overall as these projects are moved through their individual timelines, depending on the developer and where this project is.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. And that is open. That will be open through April 1. And we'll be posting a recording of the meeting online shortly. And so in addition to sharing your comments, please share those with your friends and neighbors so we can make sure that we capture a good, some good feedback. Okay. All righty, so let's see. Is there anyone that would like to go first or ask any comments?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
So when you are talking about the affordable units and the workforce units, what do you have as a concept for size or type as far as that living product is?
As far as bedroom blends and the square
Yeah,
footage of the individual
yeah,
units?
square footage, that type of thing.
Well, we have not gotten there yet. This was just kind of the overall of the footprint of the buildings, how tall the buildings would be, the individual developers, as they're doing the building the pro forma, looking at their capital stack, looking at the individual, what they would be able to get on these properties. Because while, you know, we think, you know, this could be X number of units, this could be X number of units. We really do kind of depend on the developers to come in and say, okay, what we can actually get on here is more, you know, slightly more, slightly less, or somewhere in the neighborhood. And once we have those more formal and finalized plans, that's when we start looking at the unit blends, what those square footages are, kind of what those unit amenities would be. But I do know that we definitely are interested in, you know, zeros, ones, and twos, and as a reasonable blend through these products. But exactly what that unit mix would be, we don't know at this time.
Thank you. We had a question. We have a few questions rolling in, so we'll do our best to go and as much in order as we can. Brian asked, are you requiring any sustainability or net zero requirements for these projects? Then after this, we'll head over to Phil and then Kate.
So the sustainability requirements there will be sustainability requirements that I'm sorry, the word is escaping me, but that would be consistent with the sustainability goals of the city as we work through these projects and the overall developments. Exactly what those would be, I can't speak to the specifics, but there would be sustainability. There would be, you know, some type of goal towards LEED certification or some of that, but we're not quite far enough in here yet to know exactly what that would look like.
Thank you. And then Phil, go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like, and then we'll hop over to Kate's question.
Thank you. I want to talk about traffic flow at the Dorsey and Lemon site. One of the reasons that Food City closed, that they didn't appreciate that with the streetcar coming in, you can no longer make a left turn lane onto Dorsey from Apache if you're heading east. And with all these apartments going in there, I'm sure that's going to be a need to go in and out. I'm suggesting, like they do in other states, to make a clover leaf where if you're heading east on Apache, you make a right onto Cedar, you make another right between your electric station and the wall, and then you make another right to get to that Dorsey Street. That way people can cross the street and get across to the other side. And also the other thing with traffic flow is to get a bike lane from Apache that goes all the way down Dorsey to Rio Salado, so bicyclists can also use that. We need to think about the flow of things if we're going to add density.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
All righty, we're going to go ahead and hop over to Kate. She said this might be a silly question, but what exactly does affordable housing mean? What classifies as affordable housing?
So the definition that the definitions that we utilize as a city for affordable workforce and market rate housing are defined as 80% of the area median income or below we define as affordable housing. 81 to 120% is defined as workforce housing, and anything over 120% is market rate housing. So for illustrative purposes, a family of 4 at workforce making 80% of the area median income, their maximum gross income would be $62,250 a year. And then, of course, it would just go down from there for the affordables. And again, the individual funding utilized to acquire these properties, and then the individual funding utilized to build the properties would also have an impact on what those income caps would be and what those unit blends would be for the affordable workforce or any market rate housing in these developments.
Thank you, Levon. Kate says thank you as well. On to Mr. Chuck Buss. He asked if we could see the Dorsey lemon concept again.
Thanks.
Give me 1 second to get back up there, folks. There we go.
Oh, that's right. We do have a developer. I'm not familiar with Art Space. The bigger question I have about the design is I'm having a little trouble understanding what it is that's being proposed. What is the blue structure on the corner?
Larry, did you want to walk through the specifics on this?
Yeah, what you see is the in the gray on the left is the parking garage. It's a 2.5-story parking garage with 127 spaces, and that's going to be shared between New School and the park and ride, just replacing what was there currently.
Right.
And then the building is going to be that L-shaped where you see the yellow and the blue.
What does the blue represent, or could it just as easily have been yellow?
It could have just as easily been yellow because that's part of
Okay.
the structure. I think that's more the entry lobby area, I would imagine.
Okay. My neighborhood that I represent is diagonal northeast of that and extremely close to the site. Is there some way of putting some of the building mass a little further away from that corner, maybe even creating some sort of a park-like setting right at the corner of Dorsey and Lemon? I mean, a small park-like setting at the corner there, and then try to get some of the mass a little bit further away from the corner. We have single-family homes that are right across the street from that.
Yeah, that's something we can take note of and talk to Art Space about. So like I say, this is early on. They haven't even started the entitlement process or anything. This is just first the initial concepts. So
Right.
we can bring that to attention and let them know that that's a concern.
Okay. And then is there plans for any retail on the ground floor?
There probably going to be some retail, but not much. It's probably going to be more of just what they need for their facility.
Oh, okay.
We
Right.
haven't gotten that far into it. I would think if there's going to be any retail, it's going to be right there adjacent to Apache, but I don't know if retail would be the best use at this location within this development. There may be, since it's more art related, there may be some open areas or areas within the building that they could do some displays, things like that. But like I say, we're just too early on to really know exactly what they're going to program in there.
And was this supposed to be some live workspace?
That's on the project across the street. That's more of an artist live work.
Okay.
That's where the existing parking right is. That's adjacent to Apache Boulevard.
Okay, so not on this site.
No.
Oh, okay. All right. And then could we see the next slide or two? It almost seemed like there was a driveway right at the corner, which I thought was a poor presentation. It doesn't seem very friendly to put that on this prominent corner of the property right there at Lemon and Dorsey, if I'm seeing it right. Is that what that is, a driveway?
It looks like they've got a driveway going to the parking garage.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm seeing this wrong. Can you tell me which way is north on the drawing?
The north is up at the parking garage, and you see the existing building there. That building is the one that's currently there now that will be staying.
All right. Sorry about that. I didn't
Oh,
see it right. You're labeling.
Existing
read.
building on the left.
I'm trying to read the labeling. Even with glasses, it's hard to read.
I know the feeling.
So that is that Apache?
Yeah, it's
The
Apache
bottom?
to the south. Yeah, that long linear building on the south is adjacent to Apache Boulevard. That's where you have
Okay.
more of the height and the
All
density there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I had my bearings off here. Okay. Yeah, that would just be my comment. I would like to see more vegetation, something engaging to the whole community right at the corner of Lemon and Dorsey, and try to keep some of the tallest of the masts away from the corner.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, Larry and Levon. Okay, we have a question from Martha. She'd like to know, would you please say more about how the land trust concept works in this concept?
So,
Probably Larry, if you want to take, I don't know who.
Levon, you want to take that one? You want me to?
I'll take it, and then why don't you fill in anything I've missed? How
Okay.
about that one? So with this particular parcel, this over here where the little hand is running up and down, this is the Apache end of the project where we would have a little bit more higher density for the multifamily rentals. Of course, you have the gravity fed sewer main here that really is not movable for a lot of reasons, many of which are practical and financial. Moving on to this backside, because we do want to make we did want to keep in mind the surrounding neighborhoods on MacArthur and the single family dwelling piece of this. So we were looking at doing townhouses on this backside of the property, or this half of the property. But what we were kind of, the concept we had is a mixed housing model on this site, since we had that nice natural break where you've got the multifamily rentals on one side, where the other side with the townhouses can be a land trust model affordable home ownership option. So the houses would be permanently affordable. They would be placed in a land trust and have theoretically placed into a land trust, so that as these are bought and sold over time, we have a permanent supply of affordable home ownership opportunities on this site through these townhouses. That is one of the concept we're exploring to see exactly how that could work, and what folks we're kind of thinking of that, so that we had the home ownership and lower density options on the MacArthur side, where we already have the home ownership options, and then the multifamily on more the Apache side. Larry, did I miss anything in that? Or mess it
Not
up?
really. I just had one additional comment is, and the way the land trust model works is the developer would own the land underneath the townhome. And so that way the residents, they don't have to pay for the land. They're just paying for the structure basically. And then as the property appreciates, say 5-10 years from now, if the owner decides they want to sell, then the developer and the residential owner would split the proceeds. So it's a shared model to make it continually affordable, and that's how they split it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that, if I may, is it all right to pursue this for just a second?
Sure.
That's it always been an interesting concept to me in terms of keeping property affordable for the long term. When you say the land owning entity, would that then be the city of Tempe that is sort of administering this trust concept?
It could be the city of Tempe that is administering the land trust concept. We do have a land trust in Tempe, which is Newtown or CDC Community Development Corporation. It
Right.
could be, it could be placed in Newtown. It could be, there could be another land trust option where that would be placed in, so that we do have that perpetuity. I'm just pulling names that we would know. I'm certainly not, I don't know what that would ultimately look like when it's done, for who would hold that, but the city or a land trust like Newtown.
Okay, all right. So it's still uncooked yet.
Yes, at this point, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I
Thank
like
you.
the uncooked concept slash uncooked. Let me hop over here to the chat to see. I don't, Liz has her hand up. So go ahead, Liz, please.
So I have two questions. The first one, I'm following up on that land trust idea. With the deed restriction in place, the arrangement to split, are you concerned that someone who ends up buying through the land trust will in the end not have enough equity with the split to go ahead and then move up and move out into their own fully owned property? Is that a concern in your experience?
Appreciation of property is always a little bit of a concern when you're buying a home, because you do kind of figure that it will appreciate over time, and when you sell it, there would be some type of proceeds with that. In kind of the practical realities of real estate, short of some bubbles bursting as they've done in recent memory, real property does have a tendency to appreciate. Housing values do have a tendency to appreciate. But I do believe, and I could be entirely wrong, I do believe there are some mechanisms in the agreement, or can be negotiated in the agreement, so that there are some hold harmless if the property does not appreciate, or worst case scenario would have a devaluation.
Well, so and what I'm thinking of, even if you have escalating property values, it may not be enough for someone to get because they won't have the full ownership benefit in terms of the equity. If your escalating prices in Tempe are such that equity gets cut and they can't make the down payment required for a starter home, for lack of a better word, in the area. And that's what I'm sort of asking. Well, as we watch things, and I know it's not always an escalating market, but I'm just saying that's the hope, is that someone will be able to own this, take the equity, and then move on to a fully owned home, in which case they have the home and the land. And so I'm just asking, do you have any experience or background with this perhaps not being the mechanism that helps folks? And is there something in place to help them at that point if that market condition were to happen?
There is nothing that I'm aware of, and I am not aware of that being a case, but I do think that's an incredibly good point that we need to make sure we get in the comments, so that as we're exploring the land trust model and having that conversation on these and actually I'd say not only these townhouses, but some other land trust homes in the future, that is definitely taken into consideration, because that is a good point.
Okay, and then my second question had to do with the cost of building versus what the eventual product will be, given that you're looking for affordable and workforce housing. And as lack of building materials causes an escalation in those costs across everything that they use, labor and just raw materials, lumber, cement, whatever, is there a plan in place for that rising price of cost to build to actually in the end provide the number and types of product that you envision today, so that you don't end up with too many studios and not enough 2 bedrooms or something like that?
At this exact moment, no, we are aware that construction prices and materials prices are on the rise, but we definitely need to see what the final building I don't want to proposal is, what the proposed capital stack is, looking at what the funding mechanisms are, whether it's LIHTC or it's private investment, or if there's some other type of federal investment that would go in here to help with that, to then address whatever any shortfalls in this would be. One thing I do want to that I'll bring into this conversation is, with these properties, one of the things that we the city are doing intentionally is that this land it is not being sold to the developer. It will be retained. So we are taking the land cost out of the equation. We will not be transferring title except to theoretically a land trust model where it would be held in perpetuity. The other is we are proactively doing the environmental clearance on this. Council was kind enough to allocate funding to get the environmental clearances done on all of these properties, so that as these are going out, as they start the design process, as they start the entitlement process, the land cost and that environmental remediation, theoretical environmental remediation mitigation, but that environmental assessment is done, which does take a large part of the overall cost of the project out of the equation, so that when we're, we, the developer, are looking at doing this, you don't have that land cost, you don't have that, whatever it is, I'm going to pull a number out of thin air, that $200,000 or $600,000 worth of environmental on top of your building costs and your labor. So we are trying to mitigate it in that way, which we were doing even before these rising costs. And as we move further with these, we may need to look at other ways to help keep the cost down or buy the cost down of these developments through some other mechanisms. But really, until we get a little bit farther, I don't know what those would be or what the scale or scope of that would be. And I hope that makes some form of sense.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Levon. Let's go ahead and looks like Phil has a question. So go ahead, please.
Thanks. I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to address Liz's concerns. I used to be on the board of the Newtown Community Land Trust, and we've never had a person that bought into the land trust that was never able to move out into a larger home, or where they had to move away. We don't just it is a sliding scale, and it's based on how much they can put down. And there's also ongoing economic classes where they work with the homeowner and they make sure that whatever their goals are, they're going to achieve it through the community land trust. So I think that they would be in safe hands. And I just wanted to allay any fears that they would be stuck and wouldn't have enough equity in their home to move on. Thanks.
Thank you for that feedback. Thank you, Phil. Okay, let's hop over to the comments. Let's see, does anyone else want to ask a question or share feedback? Okay. I'm not seeing any other additional questions that are coming in. So with that, we will go ahead and begin to wrap up the meeting. And actually, here we go. We have a comment. Kate asks, what are the next steps for these projects?
So each of these projects has its own timeline and its next steps. Ultimately, they are all on the same basic timeline of the next steps are after we receive this feedback and this community commentary, that we will be taking them back to the either identified developers, or we will have it ready for whoever the successful respondent is for the property that is still out for an RFP. From there, depending on the developer's timeline and what that capital stack looks like, and then they will each have their own timeline based on that. And Larry, did you want to kind of just touch lightly on the next steps as far as once we have a little bit more information on and getting ready for design and entitlement?
Yeah, once they kind of have their financial house in order and have the funding, then they'll start doing their basically construction plans. They'll go through the entitlement process through planning and zoning and building and safety to look at the plans, look at the environment, look at the engineering, those type of things. So that'll kind of start that city process through there. And that's where there'll be other public meetings for you to provide input once they are farther along with their concept plans. So that's when they'll start going to the city and they'll start looking at those type of things.
And look, we have one additional question. Brian asks, when is the last RFP due?
Tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you, Brian, for that question. Does anyone else want to ask another question? And please keep in mind, you can always email or call us after the fact if you think of something later. Okay. Hearing none, just want to remind everyone that the comment period will be open through April 1. All of the project details are at tempe.gov/housing. The survey is linked through the housing page, but also if you'd like to just visit the survey, it's at tempe.gov/forum. And we will post a recording of the meeting online shortly within this week. So we encourage you to share that with your friends and neighbors. With that, we will go ahead and conclude tonight's meeting. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.